Okay. Let me get to Susan in Fort Worth as we have U.S. Senate candidate Craig James joining us on the Wells Report, part of the Who's Next project. Who's going to be the next U.S. Senator from the state of Texas? Craig James wants it to be him. What do you think, Susan? What's your question for Craig James?
Well, I have a question regarding support to the military. And as we moved home to Texas after retiring from the military, I just got livid when I found out that many states that we had lived in were giving in-state tuition to illegal aliens, which, whether you agree with or not, I don't really care. My problem is, and what I would like somebody to take on as a national issue, is that when a military kid comes home from overseas or lives in Florida for a year but wants to go to school with his friends in North Carolina, why does he have to pay out-of-state tuition?
Wow.
Why is it that our military kids, when we move them around the world, when we... In my case, my husband and I were both active duty, so we both left them all through their lives. And they wanted to come home and go to, one of them wanted to come home and go to school in Texas. The other one wanted to go to school in Florida where he had been born. And you know what? They told us we had to pay out-of-state tuition.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Absolutely unbelievable.
Sorry to hear that. That's a bummer story there. In fact, first of all, thank you for your service. And the service wasn't just you and your husband. It was your kids. And so here you are, this family coming back, and you're wanting to better yourselves, send your kids to college. It's unacceptable. If I were around, we'd make sure that we would provide for you that same in-state tuition wherever you landed and wanted to go because of the service your family had provided, not just you and your husband.
Arguably, I think that those kids that had globetrotted with their service parents, there ought to be some sort of exemption that is national, so that when they, if somebody wants to go to North Carolina, somebody wants to go to Florida, if you've got time following this country around and supporting freedom and liberty around the world as a member of the U.S. military, you ought to get in-state tuition everywhere you go. I mean, we're giving it to illegal alien kids. Yeah. Why not go ahead and take care of our fighting men and women? Yeah. We are, by the way, with Craig James, U.S. Senate candidate for the state of Texas, 866-660-KSKY, 866-660-5759. And please join us with a question only. Craig, somebody brought up something earlier. There are a lot of things happening in the United States regarding civil liberties. The Patriot Act was put together right after 9/11, when the country changed dramatically. We now find ourselves in a situation where the technology that was developed to fight the war on terror is now being used on us, the citizenry of the United States. There are camera systems that zero in on your license plate. The concept of a free society where you have the Fourth Amendment, you were talking about this earlier, where the Fourth Amendment matters, seems to be going the way of all things.
Man,
what are you going to do about this?
I've been going up and down the highway between here and Houston quite often, and I went by a rest area the other day, and I'm looking at the lights as I'm passing by, and it looked like it had a surveillance camera that was on one of them as you were leaving, and I was like, man, Big Brother's everywhere.
Right.
He's watching us, and I'm all for protecting our country. I think that we have to realize that we are in war right now, and I don't see us ever getting out of that. I think that there's a lot of folks around this world who want to harm us, so we have to be able to have some technology that enables us to protect our citizens. But we also have to respect our privacy, and that's where we have to really keep the government at bay so that they don't come in and walk into our home whenever they want to walk into our home.
Facial recognition software has become so pervasive in the American society that now you go into a shopping mall and they're taking a look at you. They're tracking you everywhere you go. And it's like, okay, now stop for a minute. Hold on a second. I remember growing up in the 70s. You grew up in the 80s. I grew up in the 70s where there were horror movies about this. And we live that life now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's paint a mustache on, change your eyebrow look.
Well, yeah. I mean, I thought about this the other day. I was thinking about this when I was doing the facial recognition story. I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start making masks that will spoof facial recognition. Not because I'm trying to let people get away from it, but because I have the right to be able to go out there, walk around, and not get tracked everywhere I go, and then not get identified everywhere I go by the fact that I have a DMV photo that shows the exact spacing between my eyes and my cheekbones and my nose and my mouth and so on and so on. That's how all that works. Well, I've got to say, enough's enough, and I don't know how you as a U.S. Senator could get it done, but somebody needs to get it done.
I got a real tight answer to that.
I'm ready.
Adhere to the Constitution. And that protects us as citizens, and that's what we must do, is adhere to the Constitution.
Yeah, because, I remember when they decided to come up with the TSA and airline security, and I kept saying to myself, why don't they just let police officers and former soldiers carry their weapons on planes? I mean, and I started thinking about, why don't people in the United States, why do we have to jump through hoops to be able to carry a concealed weapon? Why do we have to do all this stuff? It's in the Constitution that we should be able to defend ourselves anytime we want to. It seems to me that country is just about impregnable. That's what Admiral Yamato thought in the Second World War.
Well, and this is where, as much traveling as I do, I guess, I'm glad that they have protections and things to try to keep us safe when we get on that airplane. But I also really worry about the direction of the country and the safety and the security issues that move into our lives, our personal lives. Those are the things that I think people are really afraid of.
Let's talk a little bit about how people can find out more about you. Where do they go, and what do they do to find out more about Craig James, U.S. Senate candidate, as opposed to Craig James, big-time college, has been pro football stud and star? How do they find out about you?
Well, that's nice of you to say that. That's not the way we look at me in my house.
Well, you know what? I got to tell you, I watched you on television, my friend, and it's a little different story.
Well, thank you. It's very nice of you. Texans4CraigJames.com.
Is that F-O-R or for?
F-O-R, Texans4CraigJames.com. And really what we're trying to do is engage people to become a part of the conversation in a civil manner, and to join us and to support us and be around and to ask the questions and provide the thoughts. It's so important that people get involved. We talked about that earlier. And that's a real mission of mine, is to make sure people understand why the Republican core values are important, why limited government and personal responsibility and low taxes, why that works, why free markets are so important. And so I go back to the 1980s when I, in 1980, heard Ronald Reagan speak, and he talked about those core principles. They still work good today.
Yeah, they certainly do. Craig, it's been a pleasure to have you here, a privilege to have you on the Wells Report, and we're looking forward to spending more time with you. Good luck with this campaign. I hope you take it as far as you possibly can, and if you make it, fantastic, because we'd certainly like to help move the country forward, and you've got a pretty good history of doing just that.
You got it, my friend. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Texans4CraigJames.com. That's Texans, F-O-R, CraigJames.com if you want to know more information about Craig James. Good guy, conservative. He's a Christian. He's a man who wants to see our country restored to what it was before, and he would like to do some of that very hard work. You're listening to the Wells Report. Coming up in just a little bit, you're not going to believe...